if, do you know who's running the behind the scenes tonight?
It's that guy that's usually at town offices, the big guy, what's his name?
Kurt?
I think that's who I saw.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're going to start the meeting. I don't know who's running Chelmsford Telemedia. Just letting you know we're starting. Can everybody hear us? Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yes.
Where'd
All right,
George
where
go?
it's... What's that, Virginia?
Where did George go?
All right, we're at 7:01, October 5th, 7:01 p.m., 2020. I'm going to call to order the Select Board meeting. Just a couple quick notices. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation in the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting may be found at the town's website at www.chelmsfordma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting can do so by accessing the Chelmsford Telemedia website at www.chelmsfordtv.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meetings. For everybody joining us on the Zoom call, just note that any chat that goes on in the private chat to a member or in the public chat is part of the public record and can be found if someone does a records request. So that information is public and can be seen. Just keep that in mind. And we'll go from there.
Did we lose George?
Did we lose George?
See the list.
Yeah, I don't see him here.
Well, you got a quorum.
Well. So, do you want to start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we'll start with our public service announcements.
The public service announcement this evening is for the Chelmsford Board of Health sponsored flu clinics. They're going to be holding 2 flu clinics. One is if you're 65 years of age and older. That will be on...
Did I ever tell you I run these streets, nigga? I run these streets, nigga. Fuck you, nigga. Shit.
You called it, Ken.
Yep.
The first one for 65 years of age and older will be at the Chelmsford Senior Center at 75 Groton Road on Wednesday, October 14th and Thursday, October 15th from 11 to 2 p.m. The second is a drive-through clinic at the Department of Public Works at 9 Alpha Road on Tuesday, October 20th and Tuesday, November 17th from 4 to 7 p.m. For both clinics, masks are required. The high-dose formula will be available. You must pre-register by calling the Board of Health at 978-250-5241, and registration closes on Wednesday, October 13th. You should also bring any and all insurance cards and wear a short-sleeve shirt.
The registration is earlier for the one at
I'm
the senior
sorry.
center.
For the clinic 65 years of age and older, the registration closes on Wednesday, October 7th, and for the other registration,
Hello there.
the registration closes on October 13th. So October 7th and October 13th are the 2 registration deadlines.
Virginia, just one note, when that happens, they mute everybody, so I don't think anybody heard that last piece of that, because you're muted right now.
Oh, okay.
Just gotta wait until we can get the person grabbed and out of the room, and then we'll unmute.
So just to repeat, the registration, yes or no?
Do you show yourself as unmuted?
Well, I'm in the microphone, so I have my Zoom muted.
George is back too.
Okay, if you're unmuted, go ahead.
So just to repeat, the registration deadlines are October 7th for the flu clinic at the senior center for those 65 years of age and older, and the registration deadline is October 13th for the other flu clinic at the Department of Public Works.
So,
And that's all there is for public service announcements.
I don't know if, how you guys want to do this. I mean, there are a lot of people in this meeting. There are a lot of strange names. I don't know if we could ask people to unmute just to, or tell us who they are. Or
I
if
think
you
they
want
have
to
to.
just keep,
I think they should show themselves before you unmute them, so at least you can see who that person might be before you unmute them.
yeah.
Yeah, even a public hearing, you have to
Yeah,
be
be seen.
Be seen.
Yeah, but I just, right now, there's still, there's
sure.
people coming in the waiting room that are trying with funny names. We've got a couple in here that I don't recognize.
Yeah, I wouldn't unmute anybody unless you can see them, or they raise their hand and you can see them.
Well, the problem with what they're doing is once they're in the room, they can take over controls and unmute themselves, you know? So that's and you gotta figure it out and shut them off before they
Right.
get too far, so. All right, so we're gonna start with, open session. And I'm just gonna make a public service announcement, so Dan is actually going in and getting rid of anybody that's a suspect at this point, because there's a lot of, we're just getting hammered on the waiting room right now.
Okay.
So if someone's trying to get in that's a Chelmsford resident, and they're watching at home, you know, I apologize, but we just have a lot of obvious trolls in the waiting room that are trying to get in here, and I think we might have a couple in here. So I'm sorry if you get booted out, or, and you gotta come back in, but we're doing our best.
They can't hear you speak, Ken, so are these microphones on?
I think these are, right?
Well, they're just, look at the chat.
You're
They
shown
can't
as
hear
mute.
you.
CTM Studio is shown as mute. I don't know what that means.
Can you guys hear us at home?
They're saying no.
Oh. I don't know what you wanna do.
Okay,
That means,
you're unmuted now.
can you guys hear us now?
I can.
Okay,
You hear me,
so-
Ken?
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I don't know if you guys heard what I said before, but we have a lot of trolls in the waiting room trying to get into the room. So if someone's in here and they get bounced out, just have some patience, because we have there's some questionable names in this room too that we're not sure of, and we keep getting hit, so if you do get bounced out, just come back into the waiting room, or just have some patience as we go through this. So I'm going to open it up to open session. If you have a question, you can, or want to make a comment, you can text us in the box, and we'll unmute you. So anybody would like to either turn on their screens and wave at us, or you can put something in the text chat, and we'll hear you during open session. Yeah, I don't see anybody waving us, and I don't see anything in the chat box, so we'll move on from open session, and we'll go to committee vacancies.
So we have the following committee vacancies. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has 2 openings. The Board of Appeals has 1. The CCA Advisory Committee has 2 vacancies. The Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee has 2 vacancies. The Commission on Disabilities has 1 vacancy. The Community Action Program Committee has 1 vacancy. The Council on Aging has 5. The Energy Conservation Committee has 3 openings, and the Historic District Commission has 1. The Holiday Decorating Committee has 1 vacancy. The Middlesex Canal Commission has 2, and the Parade Committee welcomes all applicants for 1-year terms. The Permanent Building Committee has 1 vacancy. The Personnel Board has 1 vacancy. The Public Celebrations Committee has 5. The Roberts Field Advisory Committee has 1 vacancy. The Tree Committee has 3 vacancies. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please complete an application available on the town website or contact the town manager's office at tmoffice@chelmsfordma.gov, 978-250-5202.
Thank you, Virginia. And with that, we're going to go to our November 3rd state elections, and I see Trish just logged in. Welcome, Trish.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me here this evening. So you have on the agenda early voting. We've just, as a little preamble to early voting, we did just get our ballots from the printer on Thursday. So we have started mailing out our election ballots. We started mailing them out on Friday, and we're making some pretty good progress there. Just be patient. We should get them out before early voting starts, which will be on October 17th. I'm going to ask also if anybody is interested in applying to get a vote by mail ballot, please check the Secretary of State's website, the Track My Ballot tool first. If when you put in your voter information into the Track My Ballot portal and it says pending, it means we have an application on file for you already, and it's just waiting to be mailed out. And as soon as we mail it out that night, we'll scan everything in and it'll show the date that we mailed out the ballot. So if everybody could please just check the Secretary of State's website. They have a Track My Ballot tool. It's great, but pending does mean we have your application. There is no need to mail us another one or to apply through the online portal. So as I said, early voting will start to take place on October 17th. That's a Saturday. And it will run through October 30th. The hours will be on Saturday and Sunday. The hours will be 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then it'll be regular business hours during the week. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday will be 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesdays, 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. So it does run for 2 full weeks of early voting. So if anybody wants to not wait in line, but still wants to vote in person, it's a great option. And if anybody is uncomfortable putting their ballot in the mail, and just as a reminder, we do have 2 drop boxes. One is outside the town offices, right at the front entrance, and the other is just outside the town clerk's office, inside the town offices. But if you are planning on voting in person, please don't bring your mailed ballot with you. Just leave it at home and shred it, recycle it, whatever you want to do. But once we receive a ballot from you, that's it. You've voted. Everybody only gets to vote once. Any questions on early voting?
Trish,
The town office is in the gym in the back of the building. If you park in the back, it's easier access. It's in the gymnasium here at the town offices at 50 Bill River Road.
Trish, were you planning on having a code red call to inform everybody when it is and where it is? Because some people even think that if they're going to vote early, they still go to McCarthy or wherever they would normally vote.
I haven't heard that, but it hasn't been necessary in the past. But if you've had, more than a couple of calls, I can talk to the chief about it. But code red calls are kind of expensive.
I know, yeah.
I don't mind doing it in this election. We don't want to cheap out, but I haven't gotten any complaints or concerns. But if you have, certainly let me know, and I can talk to the chief about it. My next point on the agenda, I am planning on using a code red call, so maybe we can tag that on there. I am increasing signing for the polls, both for early voting and at the polling locations as well.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Any other questions?
I don't see any in the chat box, Trish.
Okay, great.
Thank you for everything you do.
Sure thing. And on to my next request. Based on what we learned and what we witnessed for the September primary, And due to an abundance of caution with the COVID-19 numbers kind of going up a little bit and trying to minimize, increase the social distancing at the polling locations, the Board of Registrars is requesting that the Select Board consider temporarily relocating precincts 1 and 9 just for the November election back to the town offices. This will do a number of things. It will take 2 precincts out of the large gym at McCarthy, so we'll be able to increase the number of checkers and spread the tables out and maintain our social distancing. It will minimize some of the traffic in the parking lot, as well as preventing the lines out the door on a cold November day. Our precinct 1 and 9 voters used to vote at the town offices, so I can't imagine that they would be unhappy about that. But just due to an abundance of caution, the Board of Registrars and myself felt like it was a good idea to ask you to consider, please, temporarily relocating precincts 1 and 9 just for this election to the town offices from McCarthy Middle School.
So we need a motion for the warrant and for precincts 1 and 9. I'll make a motion to approve the warrant for the state election on Tuesday, the 3rd day of November 2020, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor by roll call? Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
I move that the Select Board approve the Board of Registrars' request to move the polling location for Precinct 1 and Precinct 9 for the November 3rd, 2020 general election from the McCarthy Middle School to the gymnasium at the town offices at 50 Billerica Road due to an abundance of caution during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor by roll call? Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
Very good. And I will ask the police chief to do a E911 call to notify all of the precinct 1 and 9 voters of that change.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? And I don't see any other questions here, so
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
thanks.
Good night.
I do have a couple notes that are in here, though. 2 people asked, should they wait to talk in open session, or should they discuss the ThermoFisher when it comes up?
It's
a public hearing.
Public hearing.
Public hearing, we're at it.
And then, what about asphalt plant?
That's on, I think we have I have it on my reports. If you want to have them just make a comment at that time, that's fine. If they want to hang around, it's up to them.
All
Or
right.
you can take them.
No, I mean, that's fine. We're through open session, so. All right. So do you want to do the license now?
Yeah.
Let me get that.
I think that's what Pam Brown is representing ThermoFisher.
Yep. All right,
Ready
so,
whenever you are.
yep, go ahead, Pam.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Pam Brown. I'm an attorney and planner with Brown & Brown in Bedford. And with me this evening are a number of our team. From ThermoFisher, this evening we have Larry Zeltner, Dave Goodwin, Hassan Youssef, and Lou Sacco. I hope I didn't miss anybody. And then we also have Tony Caputo, who will be doing much of the presentation this evening. He's our fire protection engineer. Along with Ian Manfredini and Brandon King from DPS. We're not all going to talk unless we're here to answer questions. And my role this evening is really going to be more introductory because this is some detailed information that's out of my pay grade. But in any event, ThermoFisher is excited to be coming to Chelmsford and opening a manufacturing facility, R&D manufacturing facility at 220 Mill Road. We've been working very successfully, I think, the last couple of months with town officials and staff trying to work through the details. Met with planning board last week for a minor site plan review for some of the changes that we're proposing outside. But for the most part, this is a renovation of a building for Thermo's particular use outside, and we'll talk in more detail about this as the evening goes on. But Outside, we are looking to build what we call a tank farm, some of the outdoor storage in protected containers. It'll be the delivery area, and then a small addition at the front of the building that will be for storage. If it makes sense, we do have a few graphics that we can speak to if you would allow me to. I'm actually going to turn it over to Larry Zeltner, who's going to do a short introduction, kind of high-level overview of ThermoFisher and then the particular proposal for Chelmsford, which isn't everything Thermo does, but an isolated use for the Poros lab. But are you able to share, allow me to share screen so I can do the slides while they speak?
We can share the screen. You're just going to have to give us a minute to make you a co-host, and then...
Okay.
So Dan, if you don't mind, can
I
we...
have Larry go ahead and start, but when we have screen sharing for me, I can...
Yep, you got it. You're all set.
I'm all set, okay. Oh, now I can't see it, let's see. I can't, let's see. I don't know what you're seeing. Are you seeing my ThermoFisher slide?
Nope, we don't see anything yet.
Oh, let's see, how do we do that?
So if you go to the bottom of your screen on your Zoom, it should pop up a green arrow that says screen share.
There we go, sorry.
Yep, then select
I'm
your
an
screen.
amateur at this.
Okay,
All right, there you go.
yep, thank you.
Okay, so this is just the really kind of illustrative site plan, Mill Road and Elizabeth Drive, just for orientation. I will note that something we mentioned at the planning board meeting is we are intending to maintain a Mill Road access, but the truck traffic and emergency vehicles will be able to come in through Elizabeth Drive, and the trucks will be directed to enter through Elizabeth Drive. It will be a gated access. There was one comment that came out of the police department, which was to put a stop sign down at the exit onto Mill Road, which we're happy to accommodate. But that's about it from a site plan perspective, unless there are questions. The tank farm would be located up here. We originally had some boilers outside, just standalone, but opted to put them inside a small building structure. And then an addition down in this area, with just a little bit of reworking of handicap parking spaces, but this addition will be each of these are just under 1,500 square feet. This will be for liquid storage. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Larry Zeltner, who will just give you a kind of a high-level overview of ThermoFisher and the proposed facility here in Chelmsford.
Excuse me, Pam,
Yes.
did you say the tanks are, some of them are outside?
So the tank in this building will be boilers, heating boilers, and in this area is, we call it tank farm. It'll be, and I'll let Tony speak to the specifics of the tanks themselves, which are independently safe tanks. But yes, there'll be a gated area outside that will contain some of the liquids.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. And thank you for taking the time to hear from ThermoFisher this evening. In terms of a brief introduction to our business, we're known as Purification and Pharma Analytics. We're part of a bioproduction division within ThermoFisher, which is the overall business. ThermoFisher business has grown to $26 billion these days. The business first started out in 2003 in Bedford. We had 3 buildings on campus in Bedford, and we've gone through a series of build-outs over the last 17 years, and basically we're at capacity, and hence the need for an additional facility. And we chose Chelmsford due to its nice building, as well as a very close proximity to the mothership, if you will. In Bedford, we've got about approximately 150 employees, and for the full gamut of an operation, we've got manufacturing, quality, product management, R&D, and finance. As we move to the Chelmsford facility, it'll be more specific to manufacturing. We're expecting just over 100 employees, manufacturing, quality, warehouse, and some of the support functions to be housed there over the course of the next 5 years, when we fully expect to build that location out. As you can see from the picture, it's very much a chemical processing type of operation. We do run 24/7, 5 days a week, due to the nature of that processing. And basic concept is we're making a plastic polyethylene bead, which is used in the pharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical manufacturing of drugs, where when they do a downstream operation to filter their material to get it to be the most pure that they can. So we basically use these polyethylene beads that we manufacture to filter the pharmaceutical. One other thing that I'd like to mention is the Bedford site is a OSHA VPP STAR site. VPP stands for Voluntary Protection Program. We've had it for a number of years, and we were just recertified in January. We're very, very proud of that. We're only one of 23 businesses in all of Massachusetts that hold that esteemed award. And it's really based on, the programs and processes that we have in place at Bedford, as well as a very, very strong culture with all 150 of our employees toward continuously improving that aspect of our business. So definitely something that we are going to bring up the street and install into the Chelmsford site. We believe it's a very important part of running our operation, and again, we're very, very proud of it. So with that, I think I'm not sure if I'm turning back over to you, Pam, or to Tony for.
I think we'll turn it straight over to Tony.
Okay, Tony, take it away.
Well, thank you, Larry. I want to discuss and go through the protective aspects on a high level for this facility. And Pam, if you go to that, maybe that's it, yeah, exactly, that slide right there.
Yeah, you want the colored one?
No, go back to the just overall, it's like a site view, that one there. And that kind of gives you, because I want to talk about the tank farm, and we'll go into the other diagram in a second, and I also want to talk about the unloading dock. As you can see, the tank farm sits there and it's showing 6 tanks. There's actually 7 tanks. A lot of these tanks, too, are internally partitioned. So when you see that a square, that may be 2 tanks, if you will, but it's in the enclosure of 1 tank. Now, these tanks are not like you would normally see a flammable liquid tank. A typical tank meets UL 142. These tanks are what we call a protected tank, meeting UL 2085. And that tank is a double wall tank. It's a 142 tank inside of an exterior shell of another tank, and it's insulated. And so it has its own secondary containment, and the space between the 2 shells is monitored. So if there's a leakage, you know that. But the key aspect of this tank is why it's a protected tank. This tank is very robustly tested. It is tested to 2 hours at 2,000 degrees, basically a flammable liquid exposure fire for 2 hours. The interior tank cannot rupture, it cannot deform, it cannot exceed 400 degrees in temperature during that test. The tank is also basically ballistic tested, and when shot, the bullet cannot penetrate into the interior tank. The tank is also basically tested from vehicle impact, and it has that aspect to it also. The tank basically is a freestanding protected tank, and as such, it's actually recognized separately in the Massachusetts Fire Code as a protected tank. So the requirements you might see for a standard tank essentially cut in half for this tank because of the protection that it has. So in essence, I know there was some concerns about its distance from the boiler building. Right now, a standard tank under the Mass Fire Code and under the NFPA national codes could be 5 feet from a building, important building on the site. Basically, with this tank, it can be down to 2.5 feet, but in essence, as you can see, these tanks are much farther from that boiler building. So that concern that a resident had is really not an issue for these tanks. Like I said, they can extend an exposure for 2 hours of 2,000 degrees and not compromise the tank 1 iota. In addition, you also see there's a loading dock up there. that loading dock is where the trucks are come in, they come off Elizabeth Drive. And the reason we're doing that is, number one, to prevent the tanker trucks to have to come up a steep access off of Mill Road. And secondly, it routes the tank trucks away from any occupied residential areas. And essentially, when you get into this area, that's a canopy. That canopy is also going to be protected and also has a containment. So you could actually rupture the entire tanker, and if that were to happen, and contain the entire contents of that tanker within the containment. Plus, there'll be a fire suppression system in that thing that will actually, if there is a fire, that will actually extinguish that fire automatically without the assistance of the fire department. The fire department will come in and basically monitor it and do its final mop up, but it's designed to contain it all within itself. So what brings me to a point here is that this plant design is far beyond code. We're not meeting code, we're exceeding code. And I'm going to point out as we go through the remainder of the building how we exceed code. So Pam, if you go to the next slide.
Excuse me, Tony, you started by saying there's 6 tanks and then you said no 7. How many tanks are there in that tank farm? It's hard to see on the graph.
I think the capacity, there's a chart. I don't know if we have that one, Pam. I don't think we do.
Sure, this one.
Shows the breakdown of the tanks.
I just wanted to know, is it 6 or 7?
There's actually 6 tanks, but there's an overflow tank. So that's not really a full tank. That would be the 7.
Tony, tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was actually showing, hold on. That graphic help us?
No, there's another, well, that shows the 6 tanks there, and then I think there's an overflow tank there on the right.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, now staying with that slide. And if we move down, this kind of gives us an overview of the whole building. You can kind of scan down, Pam, that'd be great. Okay, that's good. Building is broken up into what we call control areas and H areas, and then just normal factory areas. Under the building code, you have designations of H2, which would be a process area, H3 would be a storage area, and then you have what we call control areas, where you have small amounts of flammable liquids and what have you. And I'll get into each one of these things and how it works with this building. And then you have your basic storage areas, S1 areas, or F1 process areas. If we go into, you'll see in the, I guess it's a burnt or a yellow color, those are the process areas. Those would be H2. Those areas are actually cut off from the rest of the building by 2 R-rated fire-rated walls. And each one of those areas has its own foam water fire suppression system. Now realize we don't have to have foam water. All you have to have basically is fire sprinkler systems. But using foam water is the better way to go for 2 reasons. Number one, it puts the fire out, where water will not put the fire out. And number 2, it limits the amount of basically suppression needed. So therefore, that is an issue when we start dealing with containment, because we want to contain the fire suppression water as well as the liquids that may have been spilled in the room if that were to happen. Additionally, we have low-level ventilation in this room. Now, the requirement typically under the NFB National Code is 1 CFM per square foot of floor area. But in this room, we're well exceeding that. I think we're up at almost 2.75 CFM per square foot normal ventilation. Now, why are we doing this? If the vapors are in these rooms, they could be either from acetone, methanol, typical type of chemicals, and they're heavier than air. So they're going to fall to the floor. By pulling this ventilation across that, we're actually minimizing the vapor concentration. So basically, we're taking the fuel away from the fire. If you were to have somehow, someone would have a break of a tank or a process pipe or a spill of a drum or what have you, we have LEL monitors in. That's called low explosive limit monitors, and they're designed to ramp up the ventilation even higher, almost 7 CFM per square foot of floor area. The whole idea of that, again, we're beyond code, is to prevent any possible ignition of those liquids, if they were to possibly spill, and a possible explosion if that were to happen if you had a vapor concentration. So you'll find that each one of those process areas, what's called as H1, H2, and H3. And you'll see the process areas 1, 2, and 3 basically on your screen. In addition to that, we have 4 control areas. The control areas are labeled basically, you'll see them as basically 1, 2, and 3. Control area 1 is just your normal factory area. That's where your storage is going to be, and it's cut off from the other control areas and other parts of the plant by 1-hour fire barriers. And in that, you can have a very limited amount of flammable liquids, though we don't expect a whole bunch at all. But you're allowed by the building code to have a limited amount. That area will have full area sprinkler protection also. And the area, sprinkler protection in that area will be dictated by the NFPA 13 code and basically by the storage that will be in that area. You'll see control area 2. Control area 2 is a dryer room. Again, it's going to be cut off from the remainder of those areas by a minimum 1-hour fire barriers. It too is going to have a ventilation system. It's going to have fire sprinkler protection in that area. It has a CFM across the floor, again, of a minimum 1 CFM per square foot, but it exceeds that. And basically, each one of these areas also has electrics in those rooms that are there designed to prevent the electrical system to be an ignition source. The 2 more robust control areas are control areas 3 and 4, and they're what are called the illustration rooms. And basically, they have, again, more robust ventilation in those. They're going to have foam water fire sprinkler protection in those rooms. Again, they'll have ramp-up ventilation should there potentially be a spill in those rooms. And essentially, each one, it has containment also. So each one of these rooms I've talked about. I've talked about the process rooms. I've talked about the control areas. Each one of these areas has a containment system. So if you were to have a break of some kind, the largest container would have to be contained plus 20 minutes of fire suppression would also be contained. The whole idea is not to have any spread of any type of liquid that may be burning or what have you outside of the room. And see, then we also have a boiler room that's up the top of the, or the drawing. Pam, if you could scan up if you could. That boiler room is especially right beside your tank farm area. Again, it's gas-fired boilers. It has it's over 25 feet from the actual tanker truck, basically unloading area, and that meets the NFPA 30 National Code and meets that requirement. We also have to the left, you're going to see a life safety generator area. That life safety generator has enough fuel to operate. It's self-contained again. For 24 hours, it maintains all the basically fire alarm systems and life safety systems in the plant should you have an outage. And down the bottom of the drawing, if Pam, you could scan down to that, we have 2 areas there. We have a drum storage waste room, which is another H3 room. Again, it's going to have its containment. It has low-level ventilation, and it has fire suppression per foam water sprinkler system. And then the last thing we have down the very bottom is attached liquids warehouse. And in there you'll have 55-gallon drums stored on the floor. These are fully detached. There are 3-hour walls around this room and separates it from the main plant. It has, again, low ventilation. It's going to have foam water suppression. And it has electrical systems that are commensurate with the type of liquids that are in the room and how they're being used. So in essence, we've exceeded the national code, which is the NFPA 30 codes. We're meeting and exceeding.
Hey, Tony.
Hello. We're meeting and exceeding the NFPA codes. We're meeting and exceeding the building code, 780 CMR. We're meeting and exceeding the fire prevention code, 527 CMR. Any questions relative to that? I know it's a lot, but the law put into the building.
Were you going to say something?
I was just going to ask if Gary Ryan is
Gary Ryan's
is
on the
available,
call.
and if he could tell us if that meets all the requirements. I mean, a lot of that stuff I know
Yeah,
nothing
I know he's
about.
reviewed it and approved the plan, so I'm sure Gary Ryan can comment.
Yeah, I don't know if right now is the right time, if anybody else has questions, but just at some point, I'd like to hear from him.
You talked about containment inside the building if you had a spill. Have you done or do you plan to do any testing outside the building at the location of the tank farm to look at where the liquids might flow if there's a spill there? Using water, or just to know for sure where it's going to flow into the surrounding area if you have a spill?
I haven't personally looked at that issue, but the tanks themselves, as I indicated, are double wall tanks that have their own secondary containment, and that interstitial space between the two walls is monitored. So if indeed there is a breach in those things, you are going to know about it. So if there's a breach in the internal tank, you'll know about it, and there's still no leakage to the outside. The actual truck dock itself has its own containment. Again, it can contain the entire spill of that tanker truck.
The actual what has its own containment?
The loading dock area, where the tanker truck comes in to unload its product into the tank farm.
So you're saying if you had a breach in both the inner and the outer tank, it would all be contained within that rectangle called the tank farm?
No, I'm talking about the loading dock itself, which is just north, if you will, or I should say just the upper portion of the tank farm. That, Pam, if you could bring in that second drawing.
I'm trying to, I have everyone's faces above my plus sign here, but I'm trying to figure out, there we go.
So I understand, so the loading dock would be self-contained. I guess my question is still the same. What is done to verify that in the unlikely event that you have both an inner and an outer tank give, that you know where the flow is going to go on the land, and that it's going to be somehow contained and not flow. We're not going to have chemicals flowing into an area where they shouldn't be.
So you're talking.
Let me take a shot at a layperson's response to that. I think Tony's been describing, I think, in detail the interstitial monitoring.
Right.
So those tanks will know if there's, and they're bulletproof, they're fireproof. We'll know if there's a problem with the outside before it ever can get to the inside and leak. As far as the inside, hypothetically, say, 40 years from now something corrodes and it starts to leak, the interstitial monitoring will set off alarms so that we know that there's a leak, which can, the tank can be replaced before it actually would leak outside.
I understand the safeguards. My question is, what if they fail and you have both tanks fail? Okay, but what kind of testing can be done to just look at where the flow would go? I'm just wondering that you're in an area. I mean, can you dump 1,000 gallons of water and see where it's going to go if in the unlikely event that happens?
We can, and just I guess so. I don't think we mentioned this. The entire tank farm is constructed on concrete, so we're not infiltrating ground right away. And then this is the truck loading area here, which has the storage below it. I don't know if anybody from DPS or the rest of the team is able to chime in on the grading of this lot and whether it might actually flow. One logical thing would be to just have it flow to the same pit as the truck would do. We have one of these in Bedford that's been here now for about 17 years, I believe. I helped to permit that one, and I live in town, and there's been literally no problems ever.
But Pam, I think you touched on a good point. If you could design it in a way that if those tanks leaked or the truck tank leaked, and the water would all flow back to under that truck to where the catch containment is. And we had that sort of, if you could assure us of that, that'd be a bit
Yep.
more comforting to know that it's not going.
I'll leave it to
'cause-
the engineers, but that kind of approach seems to make sense.
Yeah, because I know the topography over there, and I think that it slopes downhill right to left. And I wouldn't want it to run down the driveway and,
For the sake of it, I will, this is a big file, so I think it's going slowly, but, yeah, this is the area where the tank farm would be going. But certainly, we're pulling things up and improving and adding concrete pads and so forth. We're actually adding quite a bit of additional green space here as well. The boiler room is just about right here, and the tank farm in here. But I don't think we've done detailed construction drawings of just how the grading goes, so. Anybody else on the team have a comment to that?
Like I said, if you go back to the floor plan, the left side is definitely higher elevation.
okay.
And I know there's residential off of Mill Road on the left-hand side, on the other side of the road. I believe there's some. I remember passing. I think I passed some homes down there, but that's the high point, and it goes. It rolls right. But yes, it's something we can also talk to our civil engineer with regarding the third type of containment if to rupture.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
question on process. After they come here tonight, if they get their license and they move along, then they go back to the planning board with designs? Or is that already?
They've already
No,
completed
planning
it.
board, this was a minor site plan approval.
Okay.
We don't have anything written yet, but they did vote to approve the plan, which we were glad to have that done in advance of coming to you. They were looking at a few things. We talked about sewer, we talked about location of things. We had a little labeling to do on a plan. We have to put a handicap label on this one parking spot. And they wanted us, at the recommendation of the police chief, to add a stop sign down on Mill Road. But I think certainly, Ryan, you were just speaking, we can certainly talk to the civil engineer about making sure that the grading in this area actually drains towards the, it might be a way to handle it without having to add additional subsurface storage. If we can drain, even rainwater is going that way. The challenge is it's open. This is a covered structure and this is open and we don't really want to fill it with rainwater. But I'm sure the engineers can find a way to accommodate a tertiary system.
So I'm concluding because the flammable storage licenses, from what I understand, stay with this, are by the parcel, right? They're granted to the parcel of land and there isn't one now. So this is a new use for this building and this site, like a use that hasn't been there before. Is there anything else that needs to be looked at in terms of?
There is a Board of Health permit. It's more to sort of a contingency plan, which little different perspective than this flammables license. This is about what's being stored, the maximum quantity of chemicals that can be stored, and then the safety mechanisms. The contingency plan is more focused on, in the event of an emergency, evacuation plans and things like that. There's some overlap, but that was a permit that isn't really it's not really necessary. I don't know if it's necessary for occupancy, but it's something that wasn't as time sensitive to get going on construction as the flammables license and obviously the zoning and site plan. As far as use, the zoning doesn't quite get so specific as to what's being stored in the building, so it's not really a change in use. The planning board also determined that this is an allowable by right manufacturing use to the tunes of making plastic widgets,
So
given what's actually coming out of here.
Paul,
So no,
is there any sanity check that needs to be done in terms of using the building for flammable storage, or whatever the zoning use is for this area, does it allow outdoor storage?
Yeah, that's an allowed use, and there's no return to the planning board for further permitting. They've gone through the planning board, got minor site plan approval. They're now coming to you for this flammable storage permit. Once they get through you, they're going to construction.
And so I.
So there's no special
It
category.
didn't show in the planning board packet,
There's no.
whether outside storage was an acceptable use for the IA zone,
Yeah,
and I
that's-
didn't have time to research it,
Yeah,
so-
that's not part of the zoning bylaw. It's not a allowed condition in terms
Okay.
of a conditional approval. So they're good to store outside with your approval.
Okay, thank you.
Just for note, Nancy Airway and our people are both on the call.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah, they're on the call.
consult them for. George, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, seems like Virginia asked most of the questions, but we really don't have any jurisdiction here. You know, I think we spent a lot of time on something that, you know, I think the planning board already covered, but I may be wrong. Anyhow, it's pretty complicated, but I feel all right about it.
Should I open it up to the public for comment?
Please.
Or at some point, you want to hear from Chief Ryan.
Oh, Chief Ryan, can you chime in on us here and give us a little,
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening, members of the board. Last month, I had an opportunity to tour the Bedford facility with the fire prevention captain, and I gotta admit, I came away very impressed. The facility is well laid out, and as Mr. Caputo mentioned earlier, it exceeds the fire prevention codes. And that doesn't surprise me because he's the chairman of the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations. He's the one we would typically go to if we have questions and stuff. So they did a very good job of bringing him aboard this project. So we had an opportunity to look at the spill mitigation measures, the environmental impact, the training, the life safety protection features put in here. They put in a fire control room dedicated for our response. So very well run. I did talk to the chief out in Bedford. No issues. They've been there, I believe Ms. Brown said, 18 years. And they invite the fire department and emergency services to train, which I was very impressed with. They open it up for hazmat training, for inspections. They want our feedback. So I'm glad to hear that. And that's something that they're going to continue here in Chelmsford. So again, I'm very impressed with the Bedford facility.
I don't think you need to hear any more than that,
Public hearing.
Kenny.
Yeah, public.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. All right, well, it's a public hearing, so we're gonna hear from the public. Brian, you wanna go first? There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm a town meeting rep, precinct 4, and this 220 Mill Road is in my precinct. One of the other precinct members, Chris Bowman, and I watched the planning board meeting, and frankly, I'm more nervous about what I saw today. At the planning board meeting, you described 10,000 gallons of stored acetone, and I'm hearing now that you're storing, and you skip past the screen, it's right above this one, that you're planning to store 84,000 gallons of chemistry. And I heard tonight that you were planning to run this manufacturing plant 24/7, 365. And the other thing I heard was that each one of the areas in the plant has plenty of ventilation. If I may, I also heard on the planning board that you require an 8-inch water main attachment, so I assume there's some water being used in this production. And wastewater obviously being moved. A little disturbing at the planning board meeting was you showed a plan that showed a locus up in the upper left-hand corner with the dirt lot 300 feet to the northeast. 300 feet to the northeast is 3 apartment complexes with 108 living units. That's a little bit downhill from this facility. So if there were a tanker truck leak, my guess is you'd lose 30,000 gallons of acetone or some variation of that. If there was a significant leak while the truck was loading and you were to lose some amount of that liquid and it was not contained, it could catch fire. If it caught fire and got out of control, it would run downhill in 2 directions. One towards Mill Road, which has a 15-degree pitch. The Billerica Fire Department, I assume, would be your secondary fire apparatus coming in. They'd come in through Mill Road. If the liquid came down the hill and was on fire, they couldn't get in. The other truck, Chelmsford, would be coming from the center station. It would come up a hill, probably Elizabeth Drive, and it would be coming up a hill that the truck had just gone up. And if it was on fire, you would have no access there. Plus, you have 3 apartment complexes that have some 40B apartments in them and some handicapped people in them. That's also on a 15-degree pitch. So all this liquid, if it runs anywhere, is going to come downhill, and I suspect it would probably go in the storm drains. So if you'd be so kind, since I live in the same neighborhood near Turnpike, would you mind dumping 80,000 gallons of water, and let's see where it runs. Does it go down the the sewer system or not? Does it hit Mill Road or not? And what would happen in the worst case? I believe your system is fantastic. By the way, in my opinion, having worked for Bayer Corporation and Agfa Corporation and been in, we just closed a plant in Branchburg, New Jersey, that's a chemical plant. You're looking at heavy manufacturing here with lots of chemistry. And acetone is extremely flammable. Trucks have accidents. Sometimes the couplings come loose. It's great that it's contained, but one spark and that thing lights. I get your systems in the building. I understand that. That building was not manufactured for the purposes of containment. We had trouble with our buildings when we tried to use them for a different purpose. The area that you're in is zoned IA, that's light manufacturing. I suspect the 24/7, 365 chemical plant is not light manufacturing. I believe, I'd like to just read our summary of our letter to the planning board, which they rejected and did not read. They said it wasn't necessary to have a public meeting because you were just doing an attached, minor attachment to the building. I'm suggesting that the 100 people that used to work in that building, putting computers together, is a completely different use. This is a change in use. It should require a special permit. I'll stay to the topic where this is a flammables license and again, very flammable in a residential area on all 3 sides. So I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to hold off on approving this until you can dump some water and show us where the water runs. That you can invite the abutters. There's a special needs house directly across the street on Mill Road, on Turnpike Road, I'm sorry. And there are some residents who's very concerned that all your traffic, your 100 new employees are going to be exiting and entering on Mill Road. At the time Mr. Carey put that property in, they actually put a policeman down there and you can only turn right out of there. I don't know if that document is still available to us. We seem to lose documents when we want to bring new people in. But I'd like you to at least talk to the neighbors at the bottom of the hill and tell them what you're up to.
Hey, Brian, can we just stick to the flammable license part?
Yes, sir. The people at the bottom would be concerned about liquids coming down the hill and traffic. So I'm asking for this renovation of 84,000 square feet and additions to the property, suggesting it is not a minor site plan. which is limited to less than 3,000 square feet under the site plan review by the zoning bylaw. So I'd like you to hold off on approving the flammables license today. The proposed project is heavy manufacturing using raw materials and outside storage. The zoning bylaw specifically recognizes that is not light manufacturing. The change in principal use requires a special permit from the planning board, and it requires public hearings. We were denied a public hearing. We had a letter with the planning board. They refused to even read it. It requires official notice to the abutters. Have 108 units, 300 feet away. They showed a picture to the planning board of a dirt lot. I think that was either a mistake by your engineer who certified it in May, or maybe you never visited the lot.
Brian,
I'm concerned.
we got to stick to the flammable license.
That's a flammable concern. The principal use, you're prohibited from changing accessory uses, and that flammable license with the 10 tanks, I heard them say 1 tank, it was 10,000 gallons of acetone. Now I'm hearing 84,000 gallons of acetone, and an organic waste tank at some variation. I'm not sure how many gallons of that, or if it's flammable. So I'm concerned about the toxicity of those. And the last step was the biosafety compliance. Could you tell the town that we're not actually going to have any viruses or toxic materials to test the polymers that you're using in that building at any time?
This is flammable.
Is that possible to answer that? And I'll end here, thank you. I'm Brian Latina, Precinct 4. I live at 15 Jesse Road, just for the record.
Thanks, Brian. So is there anybody else?
Doug Bruce.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Doug. There you go, Doug. All right, let's unmute you. All right, Doug, you're up.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Doug Bruce. I'm a Precinct 9 town meeting rep, 3-term here in Chelmsford. And I'm also a former resident of Precinct 4, lived over in Farms 2. In full disclosure, I am also a former employee of ThermoFisher. I'm 3.5 years removed from working for them. And I want to say at the outset, I'm not here as a representative of Thermo, nor at the behest of any Thermo employee or anybody like that. But as an elected representative who's been a supporter of redevelopment of the 129 corridor since the original overlay in 2013, I wanted to speak tonight and give a little perspective of town meeting and how town meeting has supported the redevelopment efforts in the 129 area. Town meeting support for 129 redevelopment goes back to 2013 when the original overlay district was passed by town meeting with a overwhelming majority of votes. Since then, there have been several major votes by town meeting that continue to support redevelopment in the 129 area. For instance, in 2016, town meeting passed the business amenities overlay district for the 129 corridor. That vote was 124 in favor, 18 against. 2018, there were 2 competing initiatives on the town meeting warrant that year. One presented by the planning board, and interestingly enough, the second warrant on that article in 2018 was a citizen petition by 2 residents of Precinct 4 who happen to be on the call tonight. That year, 2018, the planning board resolution for 129 was passed by a vote of 126 in favor, 9 against, whereas the Bowman Latina citizen petition failed, 26 in favor, 108 against.
Same thing.
All right, Brian, Doug, we got to
Just real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say here is that town meeting has been an overwhelming supporter of redevelopment and development on the 129 corridor. All right, what are the benefits of bringing a biotech industry big name player like ThermoFisher to Chelmsford will be a tremendous shot in the arm for us with respect to our redevelopment of the 129 area. ThermoFisher could go anywhere with this plant. I've been to plants all over the U.S. for ThermoFisher. I visited plants in Europe. I saw a lot of great places. I'm thrilled to death that they're coming to Chelmsford, that they're considering Chelmsford and siting themselves in the 129 corridor. I think it's a great choice. Now, just lastly, my concerns as a resident, as a former Precinct 4 resident, and with many friends still in the immediate area, of course, I'm concerned about any business that comes to town. However, based on what I've heard from Chief Ryan, that was a pretty resounding thumbs up. Mr. Caputo reassuring us about the engineering specifications. And what I've seen at any of the thermal site that I've ever visited over the years, they consistently go above and beyond with respect to safety and redundancy. I would feel comfortable with this project for myself and for my friends that live in Precinct 4 and for the town of Chelmsford as a whole.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak? Please either shoot us a message on the Zoom chat or turn your camera on and wave at us. All right, I don't see anybody. So with that,
I
Motion
have
to
a,
close
I
the
have a
public hearing.
question.
Sure.
For Chief Ryan.
Chief, are you there? Chief Ryan?
Is he still here?
Yes.
Chief, is our, and I'm not asking the question necessarily in opposition to the project, but it's related to it. Is our fire department equipped, if there is one of these tanks, or we have a flammable liquid accident, is our fire department equipped to handle that, or do we require additional training or additional apparatus?
I would answer it, we require additional training,
Okay.
which is part of one of the requirements we're putting on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So they do training with the fire departments, and there's multiple fire departments out in Bedford, and it's one of the requirements we're gonna put on ThermoFisher. And when we talk about ThermoFisher coming into town, let's just be aware, they're already here. They have two
Right.
buildings on Alpha Road. They're very responsive. Anytime we've had any concerns or questions, they're very good for getting back and addressing issues. So yes, I would say that training would be a big part going forward. As far as the having the fire protection features, those are built in. If you look at that facility, if you're going to have an issue, if you have to project where the issue is going to happen, it's going to be at the loading dock. That's where the trucks come in, they unload the product.
Mm-hmm.
We got to see how they do that in Bedford, how they segregate the area. And if there's a containment breach, it's going to be contained underneath. There's a holding tank that will take not only the whole contents of the truck, but also you've got to factor in the foam, the water that is added to that. So you take, if it's a 5,000 gallon tanker plus another couple thousand gallons for 20 minutes of fire suppression, that is all factored in. Again, they met the code and exceeded the code. So very impressed, but certainly a place that we're going to want to train in, and I think they're going to allow us to bring in other departments to train. So we look at it as kind of a training opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
all right, with that, we close the public hearing.
Well, we could close it. I think that there were some questions that were brought up that we don't have answers to tonight related to the flammable storage. Yeah, I mean, on liquor licenses, we don't think twice about extending it for 2 meetings, and I'm just wondering, how does the board feel about holding it open till the next meeting so that the applicant can come back and just respond to some of those concerns?
Which concerns do you want them to come back and address?
Well, I think Pam was taking notes too.
Well, I think some of them were, we could make any approval contingent on those. One was the triple containment that we talked about, and I think the chief is, pretty much.
And the you know, the flow, should there be a leak, where's it gonna go? Or how are we gonna address that?
If we may, I think somebody on the team, probably other than me, can respond to that. We've really detailed, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to be clear that Tony and others on the team have really, really thought out internal and external how these systems are being contained. And somewhere in this package here, I know in the package that was submitted, we have details on the tanks themselves. I do understand your questions. Actually, here's the.
But you haven't looked at the topography, right? Is what I heard.
I'm sorry? Yeah, so I think the chief actually indicated it, and it has been our experience both in Bedford, which I was involved in, as well as this design. The tank farm, the risk is in a potential spill. The hose doesn't get connected properly between the tank or truck that's making the delivery and the tanks themselves, and that's why the containment is recommended in that area. It's covered so it doesn't get full of rain and overflow. It can be conditioned to have, we can certainly have it worked through to the satisfaction of the chief or planning director, whoever, DPW, whoever's the right party. If we need to actually do additional grading to keep a hypothetical spill, but again, if there's just other than the delivery, there's really no opportunity for spills of the tanks in the tank farm. And I would love to have anybody else on the team who's probably better qualified to make that statement than I chime in.
Yeah, Pam, if you just go down on that sheet you have there.
Yeah, this one.
You'll go up. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Go the other way. And the top of that, well, down one more page. You're on the right page before.
Okay.
A little bit more. Here we talk about impact protection, because I think and these tanks are tested, and they're hit with a vehicle moving 10 miles per hour with 12,000 pounds of impact, basically over a small area. And in that test, the internal tank cannot leak. So it's highly unlikely that you're going to have that impact till it's going to rupture both tanks simultaneously, both inner and outer cells, excuse me.
I understand it's unlikely. It's like a traffic accident. If it happens once is too many, right? So I think the question that has been presented is, in the unlikely event that you have an incident like that, what are we doing to manage the topography or the spillover into the residential areas? I don't think it's an unfair question. And I understand it's a very low probability of occurrence. But if it occurs once, that's too many times, from a safety perspective, in my mind.
Would you be looking for bollards or some kind of protection that would prevent the vehicle from hitting the tank? Is that part of their design? Because what I'm hearing is the concern is that they're outside, and therefore if a vehicle were to hit them.
No, I'm saying if there was some kind of rupture or leak in both tanks.
So, okay, not
So
as a result of a vehicle.
Right,
So you're saying
not
if the double wall tank were to leak, what would be the contingency?
Right, where's it going to go? And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Excuse me, but I think that was the concern that we heard the residents, the precinct raise, and I'm just trying to get at how do we answer that satisfactorily? Because I think it's a genuine concern. I don't think it's
But I don't think taking
added
10,000
drama.
gallons of water right now and dumping it in the current location to see where it goes is the answer, because they haven't re-graded the site.
Right.
But maybe if they could commit to a test after the site is built to show 10,000 gallons dumped. How much does a tanker hold? How many gallons?
Usually about 10,000, right?
10,000, yes.
Yeah, so if you dump 10,000 gallons of water after the topography's been relayed out, and the site's been prepped to show that it all flows into where the tank holding would be, I think maybe that's what they're asking.
Dave Goodwin or Ryan, any of you, is there any reason we can't just build the concrete pad and have a 6-inch lip on the whole thing? Make a bathtub?
I would defer to DPS on that. I would defer to them on that.
Functionally, I don't, Tony's, or DPS, is there any functional reason that the whole, just like we've done in some inlet buildings? I think we'll have an engineering solution to the question. Ryan, go ahead.
It's just so unlikely, and I certainly understand their concerns, but with the amount of bells and whistles that are on there, and it being a 24-hour plant, 24/7 plant with security on site, emergency responders on site, I really can't see it. I really can't see it. And I mean, I certainly understand, and I don't want to downplay that at all. But I mean, the chances of something like this happening are almost nil.
And on top of that, if you were to dump 10,000 gallons, you're talking a catastrophic opening in the tank.
Okay.
You may have a leak, and that leak rate might be a gallon or two a minute, possibly, but 10,000 gallons over a short period of time, I just don't see it.
And you've probably never seen it in your career, have you, Tony?
No, it happens.
What was that answer?
He hasn't seen it in his career.
Tony, did you say you've never seen it?
I've never seen that massive leak in my career on this type of a tank. All right, on a 2085 tank. The only time we've ever seen an opening like that, if you've probably been seeing a lot of major tank farms which have single wall tanks in the petrochemical industry, and where they've had exposure fire for a while and the tank side opens up. Then you'll have a major spill, but those tanks usually have secondary contaminant anyway by the form of dikes. But this is a different type of tank. This is not that tank.
Yeah, it's almost like
And I think the other piece too is that, so just everybody understands the whole interstitial wall piece. There's two walls, and then in the event that there is any liquid that comes into that second wall, there is alarms and bells and everything that's going to be going off to let us know that we've had some sort of leak into that second wall. It does not mean that the second wall has leaked itself. It just means that within that, between the two walls, there has been a leak, and that alarms us and lets us know that we've got an issue there that we need to address.
All right, so George, Pat, Virginia, what would you like to do tonight?
Well, I'm 98% satisfied with the fire chief's presentation and study, and contingencies that are going to be placed in the future before the actual operation gets started. So I'm kind of content to go along with this.
I'd agree with George. I think, we could ask the fire chief to report back to us on a periodic basis as far as these contingencies, to be sure that they are in place, and if there's a time at which it makes sense to have this test of 10,000 gallons or whatever to see what happens, then, we should do that, and if it doesn't, if it presents problems, then, maybe they need to re-engineer.
Right. Okay. I mean, I don't know, from what my notes and my understanding is that they were asking for a test of some serious water movement on a section of ground that hasn't been regraded yet. I'd be open to, after they're coming down to the end and they're close to opening, if you did a test of, say, like 100 gallons a minute, because if a hose breaks, I can't see 10,000 gallons flooding at once, but if you could do 100 gallons a minute or something like that. But I don't know how that stops us tonight, because they have to regrade the site and get building. So I don't, can we go in later or can the fire department go in later and ask to see tests and things like that?
Yeah, because the fire chief has the ability to, is monitoring that, to pull a concern.
Yeah. I mean, as far as a flammable license, I'm fine with them having it on that site tonight.
Can I interject one more thing? Remember, this is a land license, and that's just a permit. the storage or use of liquids as long as there's a permit. So there are two things that happen here under Chapter 148. Number one is the land license. That basically is assigned to the lot. That, okay, this land can be, we can store or use 85,000 gallons. But yet, if no license or no permit is issued by the fire department, you could have a license for 85,000 gallons and be able to store nothing until the fire department gives you a permit to do so. So the full control is with the fire department. If they wish to not issue a permit, then nothing happens on the lot.
And we can revoke a land license at any time, correct?
Yes, you can.
So there's a double whammy here. You know, we have control and the fire department has control.
Is there any more public input?
What's that?
Is there any more public input?
I don't see anybody asking, and I don't see anybody in the waiting room that,
So you want to close the hearing then?
yeah, can we make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Did we lose George?
I'll second.
Looks like it's muted.
Pat, you second?
I'll second.
So we have
Right, my phone was muted,
Oh.
I guess, I don't know.
okay.
You muted?
He's back.
No, we got you. We hear you, George. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. We have another motion, or?
So are we granting the license contingent?
I don't, do we have to?
Well,
So
it's-
I would say, do we have to vote it contingent, because we do have the right that if they don't live up to it, we can always revoke it.
And as he just said, I don't know who that person was that was just speaking, but the fire department is the one that issues the permit. So it's going to be contingent on the fire department being totally satisfied in issuing that permit. But yeah, I mean, if we have some contingencies, we could do that too.
I mean, you could make a contingent on Gary Ryan coming, before Gary releases the license, to come before us and just confirm everything we asked for was met.
Okay.
Right.
So what is the contingency that we're agreeing on?
How about we agree to approve the license contingent on a report from Gary right before he gives the final liquid license?
To include addressing
Spillage.
spillage on the...
Yeah, at the loading
especially
dock.
from the outside tank. Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the flammable storage license for ThermoFisher Scientific as presented, contingent upon the fire department chief giving a report to the board of the select board prior to issuing a permit, and contingent upon understanding leak management for the outside tank area and loading dock.
I'll second that.
A motion, a second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Good luck. And let us know how the project goes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you all.
All right, so that brings us to topic 7 tonight, the Select Board regular meeting start time change. And I think this is just a placeholder to remind the public starting, we're doing it at our November 2nd meeting?
Yes.
We'll start at the November 2nd meeting. The Board of Selectmen is just putting everybody on public notice that we'll be starting our meetings at 6 PM instead of 7 going forward. Is that all we're doing on that one?
Yes.
Okay. Town meeting warrant.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is your final scheduled meeting prior to the October 19th fall annual town meeting, which is 2 weeks from this evening. At this point, it would be time for you to make your recommendations, which you'll be asked to issue at the fall town meeting last Thursday evening, the planning board completed its work and
Finance
made its
Committee.
Finance Committee. It completed its work and will be issuing its printed report online tomorrow. So basically, you've got the 19 articles to make your recommendations upon. Obviously, the first article does not have a recommendation because it's just reports of town offices and committees.
Do we do the consents all as one?
Yeah, however you want to do it.
We usually do them one at a time,
However you want to do
Okay.
it.
because, because we have to do them all anyway.
Try and move it along, Pat.
So we're going to do motion, second, discussion, vote, which is how
Yeah,
it's
sure,
supposed to be done?
Yep.
Okay. I will make a motion, what am I motioning, to support?
Recommend.
Recommend favorable
I'll make a
action.
motion to
Recommend approval.
recommend Article 2. the
Recommend
fis-
approval of Article.
Recommend approval of Article 2, the fiscal year 2020 operating budget amendment for the Cemetery Commission as presented.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Any
Nope.
discussion?
Oh, sorry. Discussion?
No?
Any discussion?
No.
I ask for a vote.
Roll call.
Now say
Oh.
roll.
Yeah, so we'll take a vote by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I make a motion to recommend support for Article 3, the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Fund, to install solar-powered flashing LED stop signs and other safety traffic improvements as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I make a motion to recommend support for Article 4, the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund, transferring $335,050 from free cash to the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
Vote by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I recommend to vote in favor of Article 5, the Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund, transfer as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? None. Roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
I recommend to vote support for Article 8, the Parker Road Parcel 102-410-4 purchase as presented, acquisition as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I motion to recommend Article 9, renovation and expansion of the North Fire Station, to borrow $3.4 million as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I make a motion to support Article 10, the fiscal year 2021 capital budget appropriations as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I make a motion to support Article 11, free cash to reduce the tax levy, transferring 1 million from free cash to reduce the tax levy as presented. We can second it and then vote against it.
Second.
Or we could recommend not to approve.
But we don't know how everybody's going to vote.
Well, it's your motion to make. But anyway,
He just seconded.
okay.
All right, so we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
No, discussion.
Oh, discussion?
So I'm inclined to vote against this, not because I don't agree with the principle of it, but because we're already putting the 2.9 million back against the tax levy. Just philosophically, I know that in some of the discussions, we've been saying this is a temporary 1 or 2 year thing. And I would like to see it maybe not be a temporary 1 or 2 year thing, and to see us look at in the future if there's any way that we can continue to try to budget to something less than the tax levy. And I understand there's a lot of variables involved in that. I think the bulk of this, most of this is already addressed by the 2.9 million that's going back to the tax base.
I would agree with Virginia. I think this is a year where already I know it's, when I say it, people are like, what did you just say? But the rate of increase of the tax bills will be reduced, which is the best way to phrase that. And I think it's, with the tight economy and the pandemic and everything else, I don't think it's necessarily a year to, double save. I think we came under the levy limit, and that was enough, so I agree with Virginia on this.
I'm sure this will get some discussion on the floor. Town meeting,
Right.
that's my opinion.
So we have a motion, a second. Do we want to vote?
Do you have any thoughts, Pat?
No, I'm going to vote against it.
So we'll do a vote by roll call. Pat?
No.
Virginia?
No.
George?
Yes.
And I'll vote no.
I motion to support recommendation of Article 12, free cash to reduce the tax levy as presented.
We have a motion. George?
Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion?
In the same place with all of these.
Yeah. All right, so we'll vote by roll call. Pat?
No.
Virginia?
No.
I vote no. George?
I'll be consistent, yes.
I motion to support recommendation of Article 13, transfer of free cash to the General Stabilization Fund in the amount of $1,370,300 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All right, we'll vote by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
That's a yes.
Yes, that's a yes.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Can you vote yes for both?
What's that?
Sure.
Okay. I motion to support Article 14, transfer from the General Stabilization Fund of $1 million to reduce the tax levy as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
In the same place.
All right, so we'll vote by roll call. Pat?
No.
Virginia?
No.
George?
Yes.
And I vote no.
I motion to support Article 15, the General Stabilization Fund to reduce the tax levy as presented.
Motion a second, discussion?
It's kind of interesting on this one and the other one, they don't have numbers even associated with them,
I
so,
think it depends what gets approved.
Right, and
Prior.
when he presented it, it was looking at whatever's left over after the $1 million to get
yeah,
down to
okay.
0 or less than 0.
So I think, is his goal, if something doesn't get approved, to amend this, or?
Yes,
In
I think
theory.
that's what he said.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Vote by roll call, Pat?
No,
Virginia?
No.
George?
Yeah,
I vote no.
I motion to recommend Article 16, Historical Preservation and Reuse, submitted by the Planning Board as presented.
second.
Motion a second, any discussion?
yeah, I have a couple of questions, maybe Paul, you can answer these, but somebody called me yesterday and had a discussion about the 30-year historic preservation restriction. But I don't see anywhere in the article that it says 30 years. Is that automatic if
I
it's a
think if I
historic?
remember correctly, that's a state guideline.
I
That a
underst-
preservation restriction goes, by definition, goes 30 years and then ends.
Uh-huh.
That's probably why they didn't specify. Is Nancy still on the call? Oh, Nancy's still on the call. You could ask her. I mean, she's,
So it's automatically 30 years, and that's
so Nancy just
it?
unmuted. Nancy, can you answer that for us?
I can try to answer that for you. So it would be desirable if it went in perpetuity, but it's not permitted to do so. Legally, the maximum time that has been permitted has been 30 years. Certainly the preservation restriction, the initial preservation restriction could be negotiated to fewer years than the 30, but I can't imagine why the Historical Commission would do that.
Then is there a reason why the 30 is not, specifically in the bylaw? I mean, I think that would make people more comfortable if it did say 30 years. Otherwise, like you said, it could be negotiated to 5.
I think it could be, but I can't imagine why it would be.
Well, we've just had
There's
a
certainly
big,
no incentive to do so.
we just had a discussion about, not possibly seeing something to happen, and
Yeah.
something I think in writing. I mean, even if it were in the bylaw that said 30 years, obviously the planning board still has the authority to change that, right?
Yeah, even if it's at 30 years or at the planning board's discretion. But it doesn't even say the 30 years in here.
It does not say 30 years in here, and this person was a little concerned about that, and, even wanted it to be more if possible.
It can't be.
Right, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, if there is a mechanism in which it can go in perpetuity, so depending on what kind of a preservation restriction it is, and members of the Historic Commission could speak much more competently than me on the different types of preservation restrictions. So basically, if this is a state or federally held restriction, it could indeed go to perpetuity. If it's a town-held restriction, I believe it can only go to 30 years. Consequently, it was not beneficial to try defining it as a specific time in the bylaw.
So when it comes up for renewal, who does the renewal?
Pat?
What would the issue be for renewal? Who would issue the renewal? The property owner has the permit, has
Well-
everything. Then why would they come and want to encumber their property for 30 more years?
Well, but,
There wouldn't be a renewal.
okay, so there's not an expectation there would ever be a renewal. Is that correct?
But the restriction is done in exchange for an action. Well, after the 30-year mark, there's nothing to, well, it would be also, you'd almost be placing your own restriction on yourself. You would,
Right.
Yeah, I guess somebody could voluntarily do it, but I don't think the planning board would have the ability to impose another 30-year restriction.
Okay, because I thought on,
Unless you had something that you were bartering
Yeah.
owners on, or that you had an owner that specifically wanted to see that their property didn't get damaged, after their tenure.
Right, okay, but I only brought the PowerPoint that had been provided. I didn't bring the ones that you had gone over last time, Nancy, but I thought it said in one that you had, that it said a 30-year restriction that is renewable, and that kind of implied that it could likely be renewed after the 30 years. But I understand what you're saying, Paul.
Yeah,
I mean,
what would
who's
be
going?
exchanged for?
I mean, the whole thing is, as Nancy said in her meetings, this restriction is the only currency that these boards have. So the goal is that you want to financial development of these properties into something more than they are to make money or somehow a financial gain. You have to agree to a 30-year restriction. Well, after the 30-year restriction's up, I mean, unless there's something else they want to do to the property for financial gain, why would anybody agree to another 30-year restriction?
Okay, I'm just asking the questions that
No, I
people have
understand.
asked me, so.
I'm just explaining the way I understood it, having sat through Historic Commission and Planning Board and a bunch of these and hearing the discussion. I never, in my mind, thought, geez, someone's voluntarily going to renew this. It's a restriction, and they're going to agree to restrict again unless somehow they, you put the restriction and give them another unit, or I don't know why someone would do that.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Yeah, there would have to be, as you said, some other incentive to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
That's all I have.
All right, so we'll vote. Roll call, Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I'll vote aye.
I make a motion to recommend Article 17, the wildlife feeding bylaw, as presented.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. By roll call, Pat?
Well, I guess I do have a little bit of discussion. I am going to vote no on this because I think there's other ways to accomplish this, and I think it's a little, it's more restrictive than what I would like to see as far as this goes. I mean, I might change my mind in a couple of years, but for right now, that's how I feel. So my vote is no.
Okay. Virginia?
Aye. Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. And then,
I make a motion to support Article 18, transfer of funds from the Chelmsford Sewer System Capital Improvement Fund to fund a sewer capacity study as presented.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call, Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I'll vote aye.
I make a motion to support Article 19, the general bylaw amendment connection to the sewer as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we have someone asking to speak during our discussion. Dr. Meikle?
Howdy, it's Eric Miko, Board of Health, and speaking on behalf of the Board of Health, we're just a little concerned. You use a squishy word twice, that the term reasonably is subjective, and that depending on your intent, that we would recommend either to remove it, to define it, or to reference it by some objective criterion elsewhere. My recollection from the joint board meeting was that there's about 10,000 units that you wanted to set aside for expansion of existing residential properties. And if that's the intent, you can kind of like just reference something and have something objective so that it wasn't just arbitrary how that determination was made.
I think we have to ask town council to,
Okay.
yeah.
But that would have to be an amendment on the floor.
Yes. Well, I mean, I could,
Eric, I don't know if you can hear.
yeah, I think it would have to be at this point, because technically it wouldn't have to be, but I think practically it would make more sense to do it that way.
Do you have any
'Cause
objection
Fin- 'cause
to
Fin- 'cause
working a
why I
friendly
say that is
amendment?
FinCom book has already gone to print.
Right.
And usually we don't want to change what's there until FinCom, but yeah, I think it could be a friendly amendment or what have you on.
You don't have a problem working on a friendly
No,
amendment?
no, because it's, the wording came from town council, so I will notify town council tomorrow about the word reasonably, and perhaps he can have something ready for a town meeting.
Are you
I
good
could-
with that, Eric?
Yeah, anything that just makes it a little bit more objective, a little bit better defined.
Thank you, Doug.
Both instances.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I'll vote aye.
That's it, right?
I think so.
That's it.
Yeah. So we're on to town manager reports. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Miko. Have a great night.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A bunch of items here, and I'll try to go through them efficiently. The first one is the purchase of the Warren Pole property. Just want to inform the board and the community that purchase is expected to be complete at the end of this week. It was delayed by a week because of the need expressed by town council. He wanted to examine some probate records. Those are expected to be released to him on Wednesday, and the word I received today from council's offices is you expect that the closing will take place Thursday or Friday. So just
Of this next week?
of this coming week, this week. So it should be 4 days from now, 3 to 4 days from now. So that's the update on that. On the purchase and sale agreement for Parker Road, parcel 102-410-4, town council prepared the purchase and sale agreement with the estate that holds the property. The estate trustee has signed it, and therefore I would ask the board to vote to approve the purchase sale agreement. Obviously, it's contingent upon the town meeting vote, but if that is successful, similar to Warren Pole, we had a purchase sale in advance of town meeting, then obviously we would move with town council following successful town meeting vote to complete the purchase of that parcel. So I think you need a vote.
I motion to approve the purchase and sale agreement for Parker Road parcel 102-410-4 as presented, contingent on the town meeting vote.
Second.
A motion, a second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Paul, I have one question.
Yes.
Do you envision that the use of that land would be governed, like similarly to what you're recommending
Oh,
for
no,
Warren Pole?
the motion explicitly states this will be governed by the Conservation Commission.
Okay,
Yeah, and for conservation purposes. Yeah.
yep.
Thank you.
Because the pole farm, how's that one worded?
That's under a restriction that's signed by the the Select Board. And so therefore, as we mentioned at the last meeting, that would really fall into the preservation restriction that you would sign with the holder, which would be the land trust.
That would bring the land
And that would
trust
bring
and
that would bring the
Conservation
Conservation
Commission
Commission, yeah.
together.
And I've
Okay.
already made those connections. Dale Williams, the chair of the land trust, I've already provided him the contact information for Dave McLaughlin, and trying to get that ball going.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the asphalt plant air quality testing update. Two things on that. One is I wanted to let the board know that the testing that was approved by town meeting, that you approved the contract, 2 weeks of testing have occurred. One was on the week of September 16th, and the second was the week of September 22nd. At this point, we're just awaiting the results and the report. But I wanted to let you know that, because remember, we didn't identify when the taking would take place. And my knowledge is each of those weeks there were what I call favorable climate conditions, meaning there were warm, humid days, there were some cooler days, and so I think hopefully it worked out to be a good representative sampling. And then the other thing on that is we also received air quality testing results from the town of Westford, which I think I had forwarded those to you by email, but we have not received the report from Westford. So as soon as that arrives, again, we'll forward to you and we'll post it in the community, and I think it'll also be posted in Westford. So I wanted to let you know that, again, formally, that the asphalt plant air quality is, and I think there was actually a chat comment tonight about somebody who
Someone
was
wants to
concerned
speak to
about
this?
the asphalt air quality concern.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hold on. I'm sorry.
So again, I think we would expect something probably before, hopefully by your next meeting. We'll hope, at least from the Westford side.
She's not here, though.
Oh, she left?
You see her, Virginia?
It was a Nancy.
Nancy or Angel Wolf,
Yeah,
but I don't see she's here now.
okay. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, the next item is Swain Road sidewalks estimates cost. We received correspondence from Steve Yonley, who is on the call this evening. His estimate for Swain Road sidewalk would be around $250,000, give or take $20,000 for drainage. He also added that we should add in the repaving of the roadway as well, if we plan on doing Swain. And that Groton Road would be $100,000 for sidewalks from the Legion to Main Street. And they also want to repave that road and do drainage improvements as well. So I don't know if you, yeah, I know that would be part of the equation of what we're completing, but I wanted to formally present that back to you. And if you have any questions, like I said, Steve is on the call. Steve.
Paul, you guys mentioned like there's a master plan somewhere for sidewalks or priority,
Yes.
sidewalk
Yeah.
priorities.
And I will get that to you, and I'll also be prepared for that at town meeting.
Do we have a sense, like, how much does it cost for a sidewalk per foot or per
gonna ask
mile?
Steve, what's the
Every
current,
sidewalk estimate is hundreds
what's the
of
current
thousands.
going rate per linear foot for sidewalks? With bituminous, with the, the traditional ones we build now with the granite curbing.
Yeah, it's roughly $75 a foot. Vertical granite curbing asphalt sidewalks.
I just wonder, like, are there grants available for this, or is there a way to, like, lobby for more state aid? Because we seem to have so many sidewalk.
Well, we have how many miles of sidewalk now, Steve, in town? 30?
It's 26 or 27,
Yeah,
something
26
like that.
miles of sidewalk. So one we always do is keep an eye on the current condition of that. What we've been lobbying for years, and unsuccessfully, is more Chapter 90 money from the gas tax. Because right now, the state's really only providing cities and towns with a third of what's needed to maintain road inventory. So that's really the vehicle. That and we supplement it with our capital budget.
Do you have to use granite on a side road like that, Paul?
Well,
How much
Steve-
would you save, Steve, if you used a berm instead of granite? I mean, granite's gonna be a lot more durable. If you put a berm in with a sidewalk, you're susceptible to snowplow damage real quick. I mean, you're gonna save $40 a foot almost, just based off of our current pricing for granite and berm. But I wouldn't recommend putting an asphalt berm right on the side of a road to hold up a sidewalk. High school came out beautiful, by the way. I just want to commend everybody that was involved. Sure, you was nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. No further. Next item is direct access to Route 3 from the quarries. Again, just a quick update on that is the concern with that is twofold. Once again, we need state approval, as we know, similar to the easement. But the second one is the state and the federal government have standards in terms of connections to highways, in terms of on-ramps and off-ramps. And generally, the minimum distance from an existing on-ramp for a new one is at least 1 mile. And I think that becomes a concern with with that location in Chelmsford. So again, we just raise it as a concern, not to mention the other challenges that would have in terms of approval, permitting, and again, you're going into a restricted highway access. So
Steve?
we'll add it to the list of items. But yes,
Steve, your note said that it was landscaped as something other than a ramp now? Is that what I read?
the former rest area, Steve. What the condition?
The Continental.
Like I said in my email, Mon Continental was the contractor on the highway widening. They were using that southbound rest area there as kind of like their staging area. And they were also in some of that land where Newport is now. And that was, their access, their staging, their base of operations for the Route 3 project. When the project was completed, that's all, you drive by there now, you might not even know it used to be a rest area. It's all closed off, they loomed it and seeded it.
Yeah, it's just basically.
And obviously Newport's back operating in that backland now.
And it's less than a mile from the
Yeah.
other interchanges, okay.
But from where the Ledge Road overpass is, that's gotta be almost 2 miles, right?
Yeah, but now you're talking about building so now you're talking a different area. So you're talking the Ledge Road overpass to make a connection there.
Because that's where the quarries really are.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what the challenges would be with that, because now you're trying.
I think the question is, do you want an on-ramp for the asphalt plant, or you want an on-ramp for the quarries? The quarries are not 2 miles up. The asphalt plant's 1 mile up.
Right.
So I think there's gotta be some question about, are we doing it for the quarries, or are we doing it for the asphalt plant?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And if you did it for the quarries, 2 miles up somehow, then you could say to the asphalt, truck it out the back right onto the highway, but. So I don't know if you can check with the state to see if they're willing to do it 2 miles up, close to where that overpass is for Ledge Road.
You just have to know how far now you are away from exit 34.
Right, well, yes, correct. But there's the whole section in between.
A mile. It's a mile.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can look further.
You know, I think you
Check
have
into
3
it.
miles between exits there, so if they went 1.5 miles, split the baby down the middle, that's where I think ideally you'd want it.
And you would hope they both use instead of just neither one of them use it, if it's halfway between.
What's that?
You'd hope they both use it instead of neither one using if it's not
Well,
convenient.
I would think that if it was built, it's a lot more cost effective to have the trucks get right on the highway than drive back roads through every which way to get to the highway. So maybe we just.
Yeah, we'll look into it a little
That's
further.
the question is.
Keep going. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question, the next item is the Dunstable Road traffic counts. Again, that arrived, I did send you that the end of last month. We did receive from Northern Middlesex Council of Government. They placed a counter in front of 89 Dunstable Road, and they found the average daily traffic on the road was about 1,800 vehicles a day, down from the historical counts of 2,200. The data showed that there's a high percentage of trucks heading east towards Vinyl Square. The majority of those are box-type vehicles, such as a package delivery truck or larger residential contractor vehicles. There were a few larger vehicles likely coming from Ledge Road, but not many. The majority of those turn down Swain Road and head towards Route 3. So again, we just wanted to let you and the residents out there know that we do have some data on Dunstable Road. So again, no definitive action, but just keep everybody appraised. The next item, which is regarding the temporary traffic calming measures on Main Street. Since the board's last meeting, the DPW went out and installed some traffic calming measures on Main Street, which was an effort to have a trial done prior to the end of this construction season. It's fair to say it's been noticed. It's fair to say
An understatement.
we've had mixed results. I would say majority of the comments have been negative, but we did see some comments favorable. Also, what this has done, and we've also received a number of comments from people about other roads in town. And I think it just.
What do you mean comments from other roads?
Meaning like.
Why don't you try this on this road?
Yeah, we have speeding concerns on Hunt Road. We have speeding concerns on a number
Are
of
other
roads.
people saying to you, we want one of these?
No.
right here?
What they're saying is they want attention paid to the high volume of speeds on other roads in town.
That's what I'm saying. But are they calling you and saying, can you do this over
No,
Hunt?
nobody's calling for that.
Oh.
They're just looking for increased police presence and increased attention to,
Okay.
the systemic or townwide issue of traffic speed across the community. This effort was meant to simulate a island with the marked barrels and so forth. I have asked Chief Spinney to do some radar data and speed counting data in terms of what's out there, and so we can get better handle on it. It's going to come up before the snow and ice removal season. When I was out there the end of last week, I also suggested to the DPW that one of the concerns I've had, and we've heard this from at least one other resident, is that once you if you're coming from Groton Road and you go around the installation by the cemetery, then there tends to be this incentive to just speed up because you see nothing further in front of you, and then obviously you come the other way. So maybe it would be helpful for the trial basis is if another center installation were to occur prior to the highway
curvature.
interchange for Route 3, and then that way that becomes a visual thing where if you're slowed and then you see ahead, you're going to be slowed again, people might be less reluctant to then exceed the speed limit. So we're DPW is looking into that. I think today they put out some more reflectors out there. Steve, any more comments or updates in terms of what's out there?
No, we just had to order some more materials, some more reflectors. We had to get a few more barrels just for the temporary measures. The last shipment should be in of that stuff on Wednesday, so I anticipate maybe, Thursday, we'll get that middle section set up.
So I'd like to just, a few comments on it, only because I think I've been at front of a lot of phone calls and so forth. But so this, just so the public knows and for the people watching, this came as a result of a meeting with the Traffic Safety Committee that I attended with Mike McCall, where we had gone out to different places across the state and taken some pictures of some of the calming measures. And Steve, I'm sorry to have put you through this in the heat that went with this, but we took a lot of different pictures at different towns of what they had done in what they refer to as a pinch point in a road in an effort to slow traffic down. You can Google traffic calming pinch points, and they've been using them for 10 or 15 years around the country, and 10 years at least in the state. And so, Steve, I was talking with the town manager on Friday about this, and I'm not sure that what we set up was a pinch point, because one of the complaints I got from people is the cars are just really swerving into the breakdown lane there to get around the barrels, which are forcing the people that are walking or running or jogging, biking in the breakdown lane onto the dirt as these cars come around. So I drove it on Sunday with my wife a couple times, and the barrels that are down by the far end, by Mike's house, I think are almost too far down, because there's like a curve there, by the time you get to those. I didn't even know they were there, because everybody told me there's two sets, and I drove back and forth trying to figure out where that was, and it wasn't until I went.
That's to address coming the other way.
True.
Approaching the curves.
But I think that the speed, what I was noticing is a lot of cars weren't speeding up until they could kind of see the straightaway, which is right at Lovett Lane, which is where you kind of get the sight of view like, okay, now I can go. So I'm wondering if we could maybe move it closer to Lovett and then move the other one so it's not blocking the entrance of the graveyard. And I know there's a lot of roads there and other stuff going on, and try to make it a little bit more of a pinch point, so the cars, or if you're going to put it in a place where the breakdown lanes are the widest, because I know where the first one is coming from Route 40, on the right-hand side, there's not much of a breakdown lane. There's only a couple feet. So for the cars that are swinging wide, if there's someone over there, they do have to go up onto the dirt. So I don't know if there's
But doesn't that defeat the pinch point notion if you have a
well,
wide
if you're not
breakdown
going
lane?
to do a pinch point, meaning
Yeah.
put some outside barrels,
Yeah.
but if you're not going to do that, then move it to a point where there is a little
There
bit.
are no breakdown lanes. There's just a little bit of a shoulder over the fog lane. Like
Well,
on
some
the whole
points-
road, there's
right.
nothing as wide as a breakdown lane.
No, I could say a breakdown lane, but there, at some points, that's as wide as 4 feet. Where it is now is, I wouldn't even say it's 2 feet. So it really is forcing people off the road, off that shoulder. But I don't know if there's, a little bit more design that could go into it, but that was just a thought. There's been a lot of heat for it, and I apologize for everybody that's taken that. But the effort was, at our traffic listening, there was a lot of people who were asking for us to address the issues on Brentwood, in particular, and Main Street. And this was an effort to slow down traffic. And I'm sorry that, for anybody who doesn't like it, but we were actually trying to help. And so.
Could I add a couple things?
Sure.
So, I think as an experiment to see if something would be effective in slowing traffic before you get to those curves where the 2 fatalities occurred, especially, it is a good thing. And I think that I do see people not slowing down and just going around, but I also see most people slowing down to go around the barrels or the prototype that's set up. I share the concern about that as a long-term solution from a safety standpoint. I mean, I can tell you on Saturday, I drove by the one that's towards the west end of the road, and when I got there, there was a pedestrian right next to the reflectors in the fog lane where the reflectors are parallel. So I came to a full stop, and waited for the pedestrian to leave before I went around the traffic calming. I just worry about what happens when the car doesn't come to a full stop and you have a pedestrian and a bicyclist or a stroller and a car all at the same time going through that. I understand theoretically there's enough room for a car, but it is very tight. And so I'm concerned about that as a long-term solution. People that I've talked to or that have emailed saying they support the idea of traffic calming have offered some other thoughts. One, more sidewalks. But
sidewalks won't slow the cars.
Well, if you built the sidewalk out into the road and narrowed the road, I'm not sure it's really going to slow the cars either. So, but that was one.
Warren Avenue shows that. Anybody's driven down Warren Avenue, it has sidewalks on one side.
Peace.
And, they just fly.
Another thought was, could you do something that maybe isn't as drastic as a speed bump, but is like the raised crosswalks or the raised pavement, like on Technology Drive, because that is effective in slowing traffic down. But it doesn't put these obstacles in the middle of the road. And I saw in some of the email, people were concerned that if we started putting those up around town, that would be like a visual deterrent to have these in the middle of the road. So one was this thought about, could you do something like those raised humps on Technology Drive? And then the other thing that was brought up was, if you look at the speed limit signs on Main Street, they're very few and far between. So could you increase the speed limit signs, or even put, like on Old Westford Road, there's a speed limit sign, and then there's a flashing thing right above the sign that says your speed is. It's all kind of like one unit. So would something like that also be helpful? So I'll just throw those out as other ideas for longer term.
One of the concerns with speed humps, as they call them, is noise. My concern is, and we've seen this over by the library, is that if you had that in a residential neighborhood, which we could do, and we could try it, the landscape trailers go over it, you hear it, the trucks go over it, you hear it, and it's something we can consider. We can try it.
I just want to make sure I understand the terminology. When you say a speed hump, are you talking like the wide things like they have on Technology Drive, or the old traditional speed humps that are
not speed
high and
bumps,
short?
speed humps, which is similar to what's on Technology Drive and what's really nearby the library, Adams Library. Noise, and I'd hate to hear we'd have to consider that, and we will.
Especially if you have trucks.
Yeah, you're gonna hear the wrath of people with the slamming tailgate. I mean, you remember we had.
You know what's interesting about that?
But you remember we had a concern from a resident at the end of Swain Road at Groton Road when every time the truck hit the roadway surface there, and they were concerned with the noise that was emitting. Yeah. DPW had to go out and reconstruct that to eliminate sort of a minor road imperfection. Imagine what the noise is going to be if you put a speed hump in.
But Max and Leo's, which is right at the library, you're sitting outside now, and I was there over the weekend. I didn't even notice anything going over those bumps Saturday afternoon.
People are usually going a little bit slower when you're right there than they would be on Main Street.
Maybe, but
we'll consider it. I'm just saying, there's things, and the other one on the slowing for pedestrians and bicyclists. I happen to travel daily on Turnpike Road because my mom now lives over there. That's a road that's narrow and that meets that definition. And you're right, that's same thing, straight road.
Yeah, it's a run.
No impairments. But the concern there is, you literally have to slow and stop for pedestrians because many people who are at work are walking, the roadway and so forth. And you're right. It's not safe, but it's the reality of that situation. So, I guess in summary, what it is I think almost every roadway in the community is going to have to be considered in terms of what's the best approach for a particular roadway. And I think we can have those discussions in the months ahead, so that when we go out in this construction season of 2021, we can perhaps do some more permanent.
Well, maybe the other thing too is we had that first traffic listening study, and we said to people we would report back, which we have. Yeah, maybe we have another one.
Maybe a traffic calming listening session or something.
Yeah.
Because
in the spring.
Right.
Maybe in April before the spring really gets rolling, just to identify the roads that people want traffic calming.
And I'm sure it's almost every road, but but we've got. I think you're right. There's a global issue. And I think that's what I was saying earlier at the outset. We've heard from a lot of people who are basically saying, us too for a solution
And
to.
you don't want how you address the safety concern to create another safety issue.
Exactly, yeah,
I
okay.
mean, but using GPS, we probably could easily figure out any road in town that's more of a major road that has a half-mile stretch of straightaway road, or a three-quarters-mile stretch, and start there, you know, and then we'll look at all the roads that are longer than three-quarters,
Right.
identify those, and then after that, 5 years from now, you can go down to the roads that are half-mile or longer, straight, something like that.
So we're going to have these all over town, is that what you're saying?
That's what
mean,
we're
I-
glad
No,
to
but I
know
think,
about.
but I think
Yeah,
what
but-
residents, I think what residents are looking for are there solutions across the community. I think that's what I'm hearing is it's not a universal solution, but it's like.
Like, what can you do for my
on-
road?
What can you do on
Sure.
Brentwood? What can you do on?
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants sidewalks, everybody
Right.
wants crosswalks, everybody
Exactly.
wants.
So I think,
wants
but I think
every-
that's what we'll try to do is identify the areas, and then you have to prioritize them, obviously.
But I mean, we probably, I think if you said to people who drive this town a lot, name the 5 fastest roads in town, you'd probably come up with the 5 fastest roads amongst all of us.
That
are
aren't
pretty close.
state controlled.
Correct.
That's the other concern. Yeah, okay.
So I just wanted to mention too, I mean,
Sure.
I did get, calls and emails and things about this too. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, everybody was upset that it was kind of surprised, or some people were surprised, but that's the nature of what it is when you try to do an experiment. But as far as how long the experiment is going to last,
You'll be down, you're talking, DPW pretty much shuts everything down in November for snow and ice season. They won't, that's when you don't allow street openings and so forth. So basically, you're talking another 3
weeks.
3 to 4 weeks.
and then if this were to be implemented permanently, that would happen in the spring then?
Well, and you have to decide what the permanent application may be. The
That would-
permanent
that would
application
be
may
my
not be
next question.
barrels. I mean, it could
Right.
be some type of a
Well, I would think it'd be
median.
something more permanent
Right,
than.
right. It could be more of a
than
type of a
barrels.
median type of situation.
And would it be just, how far apart would each of them be, I guess is the
That's what
question.
would have to be
Okay.
designed. And I think, as I
there's
mentioned to
still a lot of
Virginia the other day, I think
questions.
that at that point, I think it would probably come back here for a public discussion and input from the community in terms of if you're doing a construction, that type of an investment into the roadways, in terms of whether it's speed humps, medians, what have you, so that way, because you said at that point, you're expected to live with it for the foreseeable future.
So, and you had mentioned that, just traffic counts on Dunstable. I wonder, NEMCOG could probably do a traffic count there that maybe would determine if it's affecting traffic at all, because don't the traffic counts actually, can't they measure speed too?
Yes, they do.
So you
Yeah, the
could
police
you could
department
do
has
them
that
and
equipment,
see if in fact people do go from 15 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour between the two of the two that are set up there right now, to see if it does negatively affect the speed between the two obstacles, or whatever you want to call them. Anyway, just something maybe to consider.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next item,
Thanks, I just want to say thanks to Steve and
Thank
everybody
you,
at
Steve.
DPW for working on that, and
okay,
thanks, Steve.
last few items. One is, these are now getting into farm issues. One is, we had a request from the farmer, Bill Evans, at Fresh Roots Greenhouse over at Sunny Meadow Farm. He's looking to basically utilize a portion of that land for a mushroom growing facility by another farmer, almost like a sublet type of an arrangement. So we've shared this plan with the land trust that holds the conservation restriction on the property, and at this point, everything seems to be a go going forward. Basically, what there would be these basically almost storage containers, 8 by 20 foot storage containers as depicted on the plan, and basically they work out of these to grow what I guess ends up being about 100,000 pounds of mushrooms a year on this area. So I just wanted to let the board and the community know that, again, it may not happen overnight, but the plan is in the works to utilize a different type of additional agricultural use at Sunny Meadow Farm.
So that's not going to be a new lease, that'll be like,
I think it'll be a sublease. I think Bill Evans at Fresh Root Greenhouse is looking for ways to supplement the income.
okay, so he has enough room in what he's
Yes.
leasing to.
Yes,
to-
yeah, because he leases that whole parcel that's by him, that's almost like a 4-acre parcel. And
Paul, do you have any control over where they put them on the site?
yes, and that's what we've identified. What they're looking about is putting it to the southerly end behind the existing, the first choice is south of the Fresh Roots Greenhouse. And the reason is they want to tie into the utilities, they want to, it has to be graded and so forth. And then the other, because you need electricity and water and so forth, if that's not possible, which we don't see why it wouldn't be, then there's a little area almost to the other side of that, behind the greenhouse.
Will they strip?
They'll smooth the land, and then the understanding is once that use is not allowed, they'd restore the land to the condition that it's there today.
So my understanding of that farm, talking to the Phil Jones and Phil Stanway and some of the other people out there, is like the good dirt to plant in is on the south side.
Yeah.
The not so great dirt's behind it.
Yeah.
And they're going to remove the good dirt and put down gravel.
Yeah.
And that if they ever leave,
They have to
getting that
restore
good
it.
dirt back there and the gravel out is going to be a real pain. So I don't know if we can insist on them going behind as opposed to the south side. I know that's where they want to go.
I know I think the concern was there wasn't much expansion room there if they were to go, but the second choice would be a little crowded and give no space for future expansion.
Okay. I mean, I think we got to keep in mind because we're leasing this, right?
We're leasing it, yes.
So I would just
I think we're in the third year of a 10-year lease.
Right. So I just want in 7 years, if we have to lease it to somebody else, that there's still good soil
Okay.
and not a mess to clean up and gravel in the soil.
All right.
That's my concern.
Okay. Again, we'll talk, because again, Phil's very active out there, and others, we can see what we can do.
Okay.
And then addition on speaking of Sunny Meadow Farm, I was approached to lease the Mud Island, which is the 3.5 acres of, it's agricultural land, because the whole farm is agricultural land, but it's that fallow land, I guess, for lack of a better. And so I have a gentleman who wants to give it a go. So I put out an RFP, which is required because he needs a 5-year commitment, and I'll come back to you.
About the land between Jones and City Meadows?
Yeah.
It's kind of mucky.
Yeah, that's why it's called Mud Island. Yeah, he wants to, he thinks he can make a go of it.
You know what he's looking to farm?
He was looking at one point, he's talking about blueberries and that type of situation. He wants to do something out there. So what I'm doing is I'm casting a net out here, here's formally advertising in the Independent and in the State Central Register. Here's this land for 3.5 acres for a 5-year lease. Give us your proposals. We'll see what we come back with. I don't think it's going to be, it's not a financial return for the town, but I think the town's efforts have always been to see if there's a way to expand agricultural use and maintain it. The other, he thinks there may be a solution to the drainage issue. I said, well, I'd be curious to see what that might be, because he's aware, because I explained to him that this is a very dry summer. So what you're seeing here may not be representative of on a given year. So again, I'll come back to you in November or December with the plan. And similarly for Watton Street Farm, there's a desire by the current farmer to do a 5-year at least, so he can expand and invest in that, the soils and so forth. So same thing, that's being advertised.
The current farmer there?
That's Mike Raisbeck.
Is this a portion of the Watton Street
Right,
farm?
and why there are always portions is Watton Street, because the community farm is not, it's all one parcel, but we exempt out the community farm area. And then the other part of it is real wet, so you can't farm as you go towards the river. So it's about a 5-acre portion, yeah.
Okay.
What's he growing down there?
He's growing, I'm trying to think he gave me a report, I can pull it up, but he's growing a variety of items out there. It's.
All right.
He's had a good year, and so he gave me a detailed report of all the vegetables and such that went to the food pantry and he's donated and so forth. And then lastly, we're out for RFP for the golf course management services, which is another 5-year RFP. The current agreement expires at the end of the calendar year. So again, we'll have proposals due in November and come back to you later in November with a recommended bid.
So you get, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How long has Sterling been doing that now?
Since its inception in '96, so you're talking almost 25 years.
Okay.
So you get 12.5K in deposits for every bid?
Well, for the golf course we do, but for the others, it's a nominal thing. I mean, you're talking hundreds of dollars a year in lease value for Mud Island and Watton Street and so forth.
No, I'm just curious. So if you get 3 bids, they all give you,
But it's not based on price, it's based on the requested use of.
But you don't keep it if they don't get,
I'm,
if they
I'm
don't get,
reading the
if you
bid
don't award
deposit
it.
amounts that are required with their
Yes.
submission. You don't keep the bid deposits
No.
if they don't
No.
win, okay.
Right.
That
Yeah,
would be
we
good.
return those, it's just the, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's a
no.
good deal.
No, we don't, no, you don't have to submit money just to bid,
Okay.
we return that. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that we did receive, since our last meeting, a notice from the Meyer Rewards Program that the town received a $40,000 credit on its workers' comp and property casualty insurance for premiums for the upcoming year. And again, that just goes to a lot of the efforts, and some of them were done during, we were fully closed for the pandemic, on training and workplace safety efforts and so forth. That's come from facilities, DPW, fire, everywhere across town
I don't
offices.
remember ever getting that before.
I think we have. I think they're doing more of an effort of promotions right
Did we
now.
get one last year?
Yes, I can find out what the amount was for the previous year.
What is that? What are
Basically,
our,
it becomes a credit towards your premium.
right, what are our premiums run?
Oh, your premiums are probably running $750,000 between the two of them, property casualty and workers' comp.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report this evening. I do have 2 appointments. One is the Recycling Committee, Ivy Igby of Boston Road, for a 1-year term expiring June 30th, 21, and Laurie Simo to the CCA Advisory Committee for, again, a remaining 1-year term expiring June 30th, 2021.
I motion to accept the town manager appointments for the Recycling Committee and the CCA Advisory Committee as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Pat?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
So many of all of these minutes predate my time. These are all things that were closed, done.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, they've all been accepted, just, yeah, they've all been, yeah, there's no need to keep them secret anymore.
Okay.
So,
I will make a motion to release the Select Board Executive Session minutes A through E as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. With that, we'll go to liaison reports. George?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Pat?
I have nothing tonight.
Virginia?
The Conservation Commission agenda tomorrow will include a regulatory hearings notice of intent for the 44 Central Square 32-unit condominium. There have been some DEP concerns raised, and they'll be addressing some of that tomorrow. And then the Chelmsford Climate Action Team just asked me to let the public know that they are having October Climate Conversations program is continuing at the library on October 8th at 1 p.m. The conversation will be the Mass Autobahn Strategic Climate Change Communications, and on October 22nd at 7 p.m. The topic is Climate Justice, a special climate conversation presentation with Mia Keith of the Mass Autobahn. And you need to pre-register for both of these events at the library website, and they're held via Zoom.
Anything else?
Nope.
Just 2 quick ones for me. October 13th, the Commissions on Disabilities is going back to their meetings via Zoom at 7 p.m. So you can log in and find them there. And I feel bad, I got a thank you note tonight from Delaney Schaefer. She was a Board of Selectmen scholarship winner. So congratulations to her. I guess she went off to the Connecticut, University of Connecticut to study music education, so we wish her luck. But we weren't meeting remotely, our mail got held, so apologize for not mentioning that sooner. I know those scholarships, a lot of them were done remote too, so. the news didn't get out there, so congratulations to her. And with that, we'll go to press questions. I don't see anybody from the press left. We're down to 10 participants. Just check the chat. It's chat. I don't see anybody in the chat.
Oh, Gary Ryan says chance to speak.
Oh, is he still on?
I don't know.
All right, Gary, did you still want to speak?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's late. I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank the board for their vote tonight to support the Engine 2 project. I know it's a difficult fiscal climate that we're in, so I am appreciative of your vote in support. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
I will motion to adjourn.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call. Pat?
Aye.
George? Virginia?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Have a good night, everybody.